Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Please join me in welcoming our speaker, Alan G. There's your water.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alan. I'm an alcoholic. Thank you, Tony, for asking me to come out here and share today. Welcome to the newcomer. You're the most important people here. I hope you find a voice in Alcoholics Anonymous that's louder than the voices in your head. I've been spending the better part of 26 years, a little over 26 years, trying to find that voice, and with some success.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think.
But I got to tell you, the amount of time since my last drink is irrelevant compared to the time until my next drink. And more importantly, I've discovered, while everything that I have in my life today that is worth anything whatsoever is the direct result of taking action in Alcoholics Anonymous, time in and of itself has not cured alcoholism for me. Just being around has done nothing other than develop some memory, muscle memory, to get some skills together that enable me to know what to do when I'm in trouble. Because those voices in my head have not subsided, they have not disappeared, but I've been able to silence them to a certain extent for periods of time by compressing the amount of time between the thought and the impulse and the reaction that enables me to take action so that I can save my life one day at a time. The miracle of Alcoholics Anonymous is that it saved my life. The miracle of Alcoholics Anonymous is that it saved all of our lives one day at a time since 1935. The miracle of this program that transcends anything that anybody in the media world or any sociologists or any philosophers could ever write about is that something happens on a spiritual level. And I'm far from understanding what that entire spiritual experience is all about, but for me, what I've encountered or what has been revealed in my life today is that I've been transformed into a human being where I had absolutely no skill set on how to behave like a human being when I arrived here. I think a little bit of history is in order, but first let me thank everyone for coming out here today, because I know that there's a lot of competition for your entertainment dollars. There is a Knick game on that I plan to watch. Tony, we're all fascinated with the Jeremy Lin story, the Linsanity in New York. I am from New York, but when Tony called me a couple of days ago and said I was needed to pinch hit, I said I never turned down an AA request, and that's something that I've been doing for more than 26 years. But I also figured it tied together because I am like Jeremy Lin, being given my opportunity to step up, but really I'm given an opportunity whenever I'm asked to be of service to save my own life. Because there's a lot of other things on my agenda, on my calendar, that I'd rather be doing, and mostly it involves sitting around and isolating and listening to those voices in my head and trying to find some other way other than Alcoholics Anonymous to fix what's going on in my life. You know, I am a consumer of just about anything that will make me feel good. I will find a fix in just about any type of escape. I've got that little motorcycle out there. There's not a day that goes by that I don't dream of hopping on that thing and never coming back, you know? I got myself a boat a couple of years ago, again, courtesy of Alcoholics Anonymous. It should say property of AA, but I'm concerned that all of you guys would show up and steal it, so I named it something else. But the boat has the same type of escape facility for me. And just about anything I do involves escape from the reality, or let's put it this way, from the fictional reality that permeates my thought process, from the perception that I have, from the delusional filtering or prism that goes in through my head that incapacitates me to act like a human being. So it's a very simple story, but here, let's start from the beginning historically. Grew up on Long Island, about 45 miles outside of New York City, at what I like to say is the intersection of disappointment and disapproval. Had two loving, kind parents who were not guardians or custodians of this disease, two older brothers who also do not have this disease. From what I could see, I'm the first immediate family member who has subscribed to the restless, irritable, and discontented franchise that Alcoholics Anonymous seems to have. But from a very early age, there was something that just wasn't right. Although I did very well as a kid, I was well liked by teachers and other kids' parents, and I did very well academically, in sports, musically. I seemed to have had a charmed life, except for one thing. And the proof is in the pudding, as they say. The one thing was, the first time that I picked up a drink at the age of 14, I never stopped. I never was able to stop. I'm one of those alcoholics, and drugs are a big part of my story. I hope it doesn't offend anyone, but, you know, I'm going to talk a lot about shooting drugs. No, I'm not. You know, it's funny. I like mind-altering drugs. I have no interest whatsoever in drugs that don't alter my mind. I don't know what it is. You know, they talk about prescription medication. I could care less. I only want the kind that alter my perception. But from the very first time, and this makes it really easy because it made it very easy for me to understand and to accept, and more importantly, to surrender at step one, I lost control from the very first time I picked up. I absolutely am one of those people. I bypassed getting high and went straight to messed up. There was absolutely no interim where I was partying. All the other kids, I wanted to be like them. You know, if you were going to make a documentary movie with, you know, show the black and white photos, because I'm that old and they had black and white photographs back then. But if you were going to make a documentary in that Ken Burns documentary style and say, you know, this is the kid's life, I would be that kid in a basketball uniform or a baseball uniform or playing drums in the school orchestra. And I'd be that kid who would be doing things on family vacations, and my mother would be smiling and my father would be throwing a ball with me. My father, who taught me how to throw a ball and taught me how to do arithmetic and taught me how to, you know, gave me all the skills how to be a man. There would be all of those pictures, and then all of a sudden, one day, the kid turned into a monster. And the picture, the way that the monster would be depicted is, it's not so obvious from looking at the picture, except all of a sudden the eyes are bloodshot. All of a sudden he's removed from the crowd. All of a sudden there's no more basketball and baseball and music in the school band. It's music with a bunch of derelicts in some kid's basement. And it's a Led Zeppelin t-shirt and a headband and 3 earrings and long hair. And just at an instant, at the age of 14, just everything transformed. Everything just changed, complete direction. No matter how much people reasoned with me and how much anybody tried to appeal to any sort of sense, there was absolutely no message that could get through to me. And it would be in this sort of death spiral for the next 10 years where miraculously I managed to get through a couple of important sort of events that were happening in my regular life. I managed to graduate from high school, but not the school where I grew up. I got thrown out of public school in New York because of truancy, because at the age of 14, I decided I didn't need to go to class anymore. And in New York State, if you missed a certain number of classes or a certain number of days, you were eligible for what they called reform school, or what it's referred to as youth authority here in California. But, you know, if you're under the age of 16, they couldn't legally throw you out of school, so I was about to be sent off to reform school. But before I had started on this adventure, I had gotten good enough grades that I was eligible to get into a private school, and happened to be a very good private school in another state. And through my parents' resources, my father had a hardware store in the community we lived in. My mother was a school teacher. They scrounged, they scrambled, they put together enough in order to get me sent away to this boarding school in Massachusetts. And what I discovered in my using history very interestingly, when I arrived at this boarding school with the best of intentions at the ripe old age of 14, where I was going to clean up my act and I was going to get through this, because, you know, the problems that visited my life were just as bad as the problems that visited my parents' lives. I mean, it was uncomfortable. I was constantly in trouble, constantly in a state of terror, and I just wanted to get away. And I thought here was a great opportunity. I was going away to this boarding school. I got into all the schools that any kid who had any aspirations to go to those kind of places would want to get into. So I had my pick of the litter. I went off to the one school because they had a great music program. They were going to let me have a room in the music building just for my drum set, which was such an important identifier and defining aspect of my life at that point. And I was going to be able to sort of set my own curriculum toward the objectives that I had. And I went there with the best of intentions. But you know what happened, because every alcoholic probably experienced this one time in their using career. The minute I got there, the second I got there, all of a sudden, temptation took over. And within that first day, I found the guys who were getting high. It didn't even take me one day before I was getting high, and I was back on that sort of animal path of self-gratification, just engaged in that kind of what I like to think of as outlaw behavior. But it was just, you know, that criminal instinct just took over. And I managed to get through that school somehow, miraculously. And after that, I went to college. I ended up in New York City, the place I wanted to be, at the school I wanted to be at. And I continued to do the same kind of things. And it's very funny. One day, I was determined that I was going to go get a job at the library. Now, I lived on Mercer and 4th Street. The library at NYU was exactly 2 blocks away from that apartment. Well, the morning that I set out from that apartment, I had every intention of making it to that library 2 blocks away. And about a half a block away was a nightclub called The Bottom Line. And that's as far as I made it. And it just reminds me, when I read in Bill's story, I read the stories in the big book, you know, having the best of intentions, let me just try this, and no matter what came up in my path, I always found the drink first, because that was my destiny, that was what I was determined to do. Managed to get through school somehow. I like to think through a combination of academic fraud and speed, but I did get through. I came out here, the next logical step for someone with my criminal instincts was law school, and that's why I came to Los Angeles. And I know we're being recorded, and I think the felonies that I'm confessing to are beyond the statute of limitations, but I'd like to compliment the people at that law school who enabled me to finish. I managed to graduate the youngest kid in my law school class. I got the job in the industry, in the entertainment industry, that I thought I was born to have. You know, at this point in my career, at the age of 23, I figured I was going to be running that place within a couple of months. Well, something very sad and shocking happened, because I very unceremoniously got escorted from the building about 8 months after graduation, because my little dog and pony show was not playing at the corporate level. They got a little bit tired of the fact that I was missing in action day after day for weeks on end, that I was reporting that work had been done when it had not been done. Nobody could find me. You know, I was on the loose. I was just the animal without any kind of supervision, and it just wasn't playing. And when I was kicked out of that job, I ended up in a basement apartment over near Sunset and Doheny. And that basement apartment for me was to be not my final sort of death spiral, the location of my final death spiral, but it was pretty close to the final one. But what happened in that 6-month period that I'm about to describe, I was living in a basement apartment, maybe, I don't know, a fraction of the size of this room. And any of you who've been in a basement apartment know that typically you have windows at eye level, kind of looking out onto the sidewalk. So if you're like me, the first thing you do when you're in a basement apartment like that is you put aluminum foil over the windows for a variety of reasons. You know, it's a decorating tip for all you people who are really into the decor. But the aluminum foil not only keeps prying eyes out, but it keeps the light of day from coming in at 6 o'clock in the morning when you're on one of those, another one of those continuing benders where it's a shocking reminder of what a pitiful and pathetic life you have. At 6 o'clock every morning when you hear the birds chirping and you realize what a complete waste you've become. You know, and for 6 months, there were intervals, days, where I would determine that I'm going to get my act together. After all, I was the youngest kid to graduate in my law school class, so full of promise, so full of opportunity. And here I was, relegated to the confines of what was to become sort of like a coffin for me, where I was proceeding to kill myself one day at a time. I would have psychotic breaches where I was completely delusional from just pure lack of sleep and all kinds of narcotic influence. The reality was, for me, I was urinating into empty liquor bottles because I was too paranoid to flush the toilets. You know, I have to remind myself first, because I know what awaits me if I choose to go back out there. When I had my 25th birthday party a year and some months ago, I drove by there for the first time, and I got out of my car and I walked up to that basement apartment and peeked in, and I started crying just to remind myself it's still there. I can still go back there. And second, I like to share this part of the story because I want you all to know that I've got the credibility to speak about the disease of alcoholism, because I know when I was new, and even sometime since, I'm busy judging the speaker at the podium because I don't know that they have the credentials to tell me what the disease is all about. I don't know. The reality is, for me, I spent the 6 months in that apartment. I called some guy up that I went to law school with because I was trying to borrow 20 bucks. I had burned every single bridge. I'd been on one of these benders where I didn't have money to eat. And I came down, you know, and during this time, I'd run over to the supermarket and I'd shoplift some food in between sucking the NyQuil out of the bottles in the aisle in the supermarket. I'd suck the nitrous oxide out of the whipped cream canisters. I mean, I'm a garbage can junkie, a two-bit low-rent junkie. It's just, I like the effect produced by alcohol and drugs. And, you know, alcohol and drugs did something for me long before it did something to me. But the problem in my case, it stopped working so shortly after I started using it. And that's one of the great paradoxes or ironies about getting high. Something that seems to bring pleasure, how it turns on you and just brings utter destruction and ruin. And in my case, I feel fortunate, again, when I get to the encounter at step one, I don't have any confusion about whether or not I lost control. It just makes it really easy. Because in my mind, when I'm taking step one, do I feel like I can go out there and pick up a drink and control it? And the answer is, I have absolutely no illusion that I could pick up a drink and actually drink again. It's a wonderful thing. I'm really grateful for it. Not that it stops me from thinking about it. Look, I was at a meeting a couple of weeks ago, and some guy, he's got like 30 days, 15 days. He's talking about going on this heroin run where he's driving his car from Oregon to Seattle. He knows some girl there who might be holding some stuff. And the first thing that comes out of my mind is, boy, I'm really lucky that I don't have to live like that. Then I said, boy, he's really lucky that he gets to do that. You know, I don't trust my judgment in these matters. I've got an infinite capacity for making bad decisions. So, this guy that I called back in June of 1985, I said I needed to borrow 20 bucks. He was incredulous. He couldn't believe that I needed 20 bucks. I said, you gonna give me the fucking money or not? Pardon, no disrespect for AA. He says, where are you? I didn't want him to come see this apartment, this basement that had really become this tomb for me. I met him on the street. You know, we still have pride, even when we're down at the bottom. I met him. He took me to Carney's hamburger stand. He took me, and I ate the first food I had for, I don't know, it doesn't matter what I say in the story, 1 day, 3 days, 5 days. I think it was a couple of days that I hadn't even eaten. Had a cheeseburger, fries, and a Coke at Carney's hamburger stand on Sunset, still there. Food sucks, but, you know, that day it tasted really good. But tasted so good, you know, and the first thing that went through my mind after I finished eating that meal was, good, now I can get loaded again. That's pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization in my book. I thought I can get loaded again. To this man's credit, he never let me go back to that apartment by myself. He came back there with me. We packed up a bag. We went off to a hospital that took that old insurance policy that I happened to have that was still in effect from when I'd been a law student a year earlier. Went into a hospital, was introduced to the $30,000 edition of the Big Book. You people may have the $5 edition. I got the $30,000 edition of the Big Book, courtesy of whatever insurance company that was, ABA Law Student Insurance. I sort of heard what you people had that you were trying to sell to me. I didn't really care much. I thought it was good for you. I thought, you know, this is a wonderful thing that you people are doing with your lives. But as soon as I got a couple of days under my belt, spent that 30 days in the hospital, it was a good reprieve. I tried to get out of there a little bit early. One time I got upset, annoyed with what they were saying to me in a group. I went over to the payphones in the hall, picked up the payphone, realized I didn't have a dime even to make a phone call, and then I realized even more consequentially, I didn't even have anyone to call. And for me, that's a great reminder, because I'm amazed when people come into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous with a desire to get sober and they still have options. For me, it took the elimination of all option, the elimination of all possibility. I had nowhere else left to go. So this was the final destination for me, the end of the road. I stayed in that program. I even went to a halfway house for another 30 days after that. Then I went out on the road doing a little bit of tour management with some nonsensical children's group that we went on the road around the country. And I even went to meetings around the country in a few different cities. And then after about, I think I had about 100 days together, that first run of sobriety. And it just seemed like a good idea to get high one day. And there I was, back in a hotel room, motel, staring at the peephole, looking at the wall all night long in a complete state of, a complete psycho breakdown, staring at the fluorescent lights flickering in the hallway. I don't know, you know, that seems to be like my ideal high. I don't know. You know, seems like a good time to me. I ended up back at the Bishop Gooden home in Pasadena, December 4, 1985. I took my last $600. I gave it to the guy that was running the desk that day, and I asked him if he had a place for me to stay and if he could feed me. And he said, you can come in here if you promise to do what we tell you to do. I said, I'll do whatever you tell me to do. And it was sort of that line that Blake read out of chapter 5. If you've decided that you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you're ready to take certain steps. I didn't know what you people had. All I knew is I didn't want what I had anymore, and I was willing to do anything not to have what I had anymore. I didn't want to go back to that basement apartment, and I didn't want to go back to that motel, and I just could not stand living the way that I had been living. And for some reason, I became an early adapter. I decided I was going to do whatever you people told me to do. You told me to get commitments. I got commitments at every single meeting I went to. I went to several meetings a day. I had no prospects, no job, no money, nothing to do. I really had no idea, nor did I have any concern about what to do, because all I wanted to do was try and not feel the way that I had been feeling. And slowly but surely, in this adaptation process, I acquired certain skills. And I don't think it has anything to do with me, but I think it's the mystery that transcends what this program is all about. In the process of getting commitments and showing up, I got accountability and responsibility. I became dependable. I became accountable to myself. In the process of working steps where the rubber meets the road, I got things like forgiveness. I got things like integrity, and I learned what honesty was for the first time. You gave me the courage to go out and do the things that were next on my agenda. I needed to pass the bar exam. I had not studied one day the entire time I was in law school. I got those study books that I needed in order to learn the law sufficiently to pass the California bar exam. I told my sponsor at the time, there's just too much here. He said, why don't you try reading one word at a time? I resented that, and he said, just go try reading one word at a time. So I sat down. I could concentrate for maybe 5 minutes at a time. Then gradually it got to be 10 minutes, then an hour, then several hours at a time. And for some reason, you guys stuck with me. You got me through the bar exam. I passed. I got sworn in, and I knew it was all because of Alcoholics Anonymous. And then when I was trying my first case 25 years ago, I didn't know what I was doing, but I just knew that if I showed up and did the things that you taught me to do, that you revealed to me, if I did the serenity prayer, the third step prayer, and I showed up and I did what I was supposed to do with integrity, that everything would be all right. And I won that first case, and I won many cases since then. And you know what? Everything that I have in my career is the direct result of applying the principles. Now, we talk about the principles, and back to my initial point or early point, just staying sober for a period of time will not give me recovery. There's a line on page, I think it's 19 of the big book. It says, We feel the elimination of our drinking is but a beginning. A much more important demonstration of our principles lies before us in our respective homes, occupations, and affairs. Demonstration of our principles, applying those principles. And half measures come real easy to me. I'm a real firm believer. I like doing everything in a half-assed manner because it's safe. In the event that I fail, I don't have to look back and say, I really gave it 100% and I failed. If I do everything in a half-assed manner, I can say, well, I didn't really try. So, that's why I'm not playing center field for the Yankees today. Whatever it is, the gift that I've gotten is the ability to show up and do things when I'm challenged. I'm confused, I feel threatened, I feel scared. I don't always have any sense of certainty about what's going to happen or what I'm doing at any given time. And I just finished the first phase of a trial, and I've tried, 200 cases since I first got sworn in some 25 years ago. And there's a lot of times where I'm confused, and that the state of being in trial is as much a physical state as a mental state. And so much of the preparation for trial is in isolation. It's in solitary confinement. I sequester myself, and I've got to read transcripts and prepare examinations. Occasionally, you spend a little bit of time woodshedding witnesses or preparing them to testify. But so much of it goes on in my head. And there's so much doubt and so much confusion. It's a judge. You don't know if you're going to get through. And it's those voices in my head. And in order to quiet those voices, the only relief that I get is the assurance that if I just walk through this and do it with integrity, I will be okay. And the results speak for themselves. Look, I'm not undefeated, but I've got a terrific record. I'm not the biggest guy in the state, in the county, in the city. I'm not even the most important lawyer in my office building. The reality is I'm the biggest lawyer in my office because it's my office, It's amazing to me that clients will come to me and hire me for the kinds of things where people wouldn't trust me to deliver their dope for them 27 years ago. There was a guy that I used to beg him to let me take his dope and deliver it to his customers, and he would wrap it in duct tape because he didn't trust me. Now people entrust me with multi-million-dollar cases. And 3 years ago, on behalf of that employer, that company that fired me back in 1986, 8 months after law school, they had hired me after I'd been a lawyer about 7 years after I got sober. I continued to do work for them for several years. 3 years ago, I got the second largest verdict in United States history on a music infringement case for that client. So look, I've seen in the process, in the evolution of recovery, how opportunity is at our doorstep. And I say to everyone who comes into Alcoholics Anonymous, whatever your dreams are, you're probably selling them short, because everything that I dreamed in terms of what I wanted to achieve, that's happened along the way. Not in my time frame, not in the manner that I envisioned, not in the manner that I wanted it to. But everything that I have that's worth anything has come about as a result of taking action and practicing these principles. I do the same things today after 26 plus years that I was doing when I was a newcomer. I probably don't have as many commitments. Well, I don't have as many commitments, but I'm as committed to showing up for the meetings. Just like Tony calls, I said, I don't turn down an AA request. It's that simple, rule one. This is where it all started for me. This is the, what do you say, the alpha and the omega of it. This is the beginning and the end. Because without this, and I always like to share at a meeting, I show up in the middle of, I'm in the sort of complete state of chaos, whatever's going on, and I show up at a meeting. And it takes me a few minutes just to sort of get centered and realize that, I can come down, I can stop vibrating a little, I turn the cell phone off, I don't check my cell phone during meetings, I get mad at people when they check their cell phones during meetings. Just, it'll survive for an hour. I don't, are you the guy with the nuclear launch codes and we've just gone to war with, Iran? I mean, an hour, anybody can wait, if you gotta If you got to be in the surgical suite, okay, I understand. But for an hour, just turn it off. And I say, I'm way too busy to be at a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. But the inverse, converse, however you characterize it, is that without being at the meetings and without doing the things that I've been trained to do, I won't have any of that other stuff. I won't have any of that other stuff. Because in an instant, I know that the kid with 15 or 30 days who's talking about going on a dope run from Oregon to Seattle, that sounds good to me. That's my, basic problem. 26 plus years after my last drink or experience getting high for recreational or necessity purposes, I still, and knowing, having the self-knowledge that I cannot possibly stay sober without some sort of spiritual method to quiet those demons in my brain, it still sounds good to me. And you know what? It comes down, Andre and I talked about this a while ago, perception, perspective, expectations, desire. All of those things are the things that I have to be on the lookout for on a daily basis. My perception, not very accurate. I hear things that don't really exist. I respond to fictional events. To give you an example, I live in a beautiful home. My wife and I are looking at a neighbor's home, built this rock star mansion, going through it, looks really nice. My wife says very innocuously, very innocently, boy, that's a really nice house. I heard her say, your house sucks and you're a loser. Because I have a special decoding system. I don't know if you people have the same software. I don't know who makes this crap, but I hear things the way that my insecurities determine that I've heard them. Perspective. They say, you people say, that all I really need to do in order to feel better about myself is to see how I can help someone else. I don't believe that. I think the way to help myself is to go do something for myself, right? I'm feeling bad, let's go eat some shit food. I'm feeling bad, let's go out and buy something that I don't want or need. Let's go out and get something that'll make other people think better of me. That's how my mind works. So the perspective. They say, you say, if I go out and do something for someone else, then I'll feel better. Case in point, feeling, caught up in my own drama, listening to the voices in my head a couple of days ago in the office. Some guy calls me, tells me he's stuck in a custody battle with his wife who took his kid out of state. He doesn't have enough money to pay the legal fees, and I think, oh my God, he's gonna start hitting me up for money or free legal advice. Poor me, right? So he just wanted to talk. He's doing the AA thing that his sponsor and sponsor, ad infinitum, probably recommended to him, just as many of us probably would say the same thing. Reach out and talk to another alcoholic. Just pick up the phone, check in, see how other people are doing. All of a sudden, I'm engaged in a dialogue, and you know what? I hear myself saying to him exactly what I need someone to say to me. I hear myself saying to him that I need to be of service and stay out of the result and just think of what I can do on a daily basis, because my primary purpose is to stay sober and help another alcoholic stay sober. That is my primary purpose. The spiritual life is not a theory. We must live it. What are the spiritual things I can do to be of assistance, to be kind, charitable, considerate of another human being? It's that simple. Just get out of my own head. Start thinking about someone else's situation. Somebody cuts me off on the freeway. They must be having a bad day. They must need to get someplace very quickly. Let them go. You know what? I got enough things on my plate. I don't need to contend with what violence I can certainly bring about if I'm going to engage in a chase down the freeway. Expectations. We hear resentments under construction. Expectations. Stay out of the result. I had a tragedy in my life. Now I'm going to tell you what it was. Nobody's going to think of this as a tragedy except me. I had a tragedy because I tried a case 2 years ago that I 100% fully expected to win. 100%. I've never had that much confidence in the outcome of case in over 200 cases that I've tried. I 100% fully expected to win that case, and I lost. And I still have not recovered from the pain, the anguish. I carry this thing around. It is the ice pick in my chest that I have to loosen up just to let some oxygen in so I can breathe. Because those expectations, I cannot reconcile in my head how I lost that case. Stay out of the results, expectations. And finally, desire. If I focus on just what I need to do in order to live a better life, it has nothing to do with consumer acquisitions. It has nothing to do with looking good or trying to blow smoke up anyone's ass or trying to convince you people what a great program I have. There's absolutely no value in me trying to sell you on the quality of my program. The quality of my program speaks to me every single day when I look in the mirror and as I stand before myself and look and see what the man is before me, who the man is before me. You know, you people have given me the skills in order to have a life. I will kid you not, I scramble every single day in order to come to the place where I can feel comfortable, because all I want to do is walk through life with some sort of sense of calm, some sort of sense of peace, and quiet those voices down in my head. And for the most part, what you people have given me has enabled me to live the life beyond anything I imagined. So thank you again, Tony, for asking me to come out. Thank you for my life.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious. Do you think this is better than Zoom? I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious. Do you think this is better than Zoom?